Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking time. Thank you for taking some devotion to connect with us today. I'm really happy to introduce you to a very good friend of mine. Her name is April, and her and I have a long history, and she'll be weaving in her brilliance into the Embracing Immunity program. And so, why don't we start about talking, April, about our relationship and how we met? I know it's been a long time, at least 2 decades.
Yeah, it's been a long time, a very sweet time. So I met Lacey because I was practicing at her mother's studio. Um, and Lacey actually returned back because you were abroad for a
Yes,
bit,
in
and then you
Florida.
returned back to Stony Plain, where we're both, I don't know if we're originally from there, but we spent a lot of time connecting in Stony
Mhm.
Plain together. And I was, of course, drawn to your mother. I was there practicing, and then you came back and you brought in like this whole other additional facet to that community that was there. And I just really resonated with your devotion. And I also resonated with the integrity that you carried within the practice and the way you taught. And it was something a little bit like, um, I just felt like you were inviting us without actually formally inviting us into the depth of yoga.
Mm.
And that's as a student. And so that's how our relationship really began, is through the practice of yoga. And your mother was a little bit like a mother bear mentor, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So when you arrived, you were more like, to me, um, I could say like wise older sister. You're not necessarily that much older than me, but like the big sister, you're like the wise big sister. So it kind of felt like um, it's like family,
Mhm.
without necessarily being like actually physically family. So it was like this little yoga family that created a guidance for me. And I got to look up to both you and your mom. And so that's my connection with you.
Yeah, and I feel the same because I remember I rebelled my mom in taking her yoga at a young age. And so you actually trained with my mom formally before I did. And so I completely recognize you as a sister in that way, just how the whole dynamic and the puzzle piece placed itself. And I remember when I came back from Florida, how devoted you were and a little bit younger than me, but so concentrated and connected. And I've always admired that quality about you. And so what drew you to take yoga in the first place?
What drew me to take yoga? Well, it's kind of an interesting thing. That's always an interesting question for me, because for me, it was a little bit more like an inner calling that I had no conscious awareness of. Um, and I remember I would drive to school and I would see on the way to school was the home studio, AccuHarmony Health. And I would see it, I don't know how long I saw it for, but one day I just wanted to go, decided I was going to go to yoga. And it's ironic because I don't think I really knew what yoga was, actually. And I didn't know anyone that practiced yoga. And the funny thing is that even now, I don't have any family or friends that practice yoga other than friends that I met in yoga. So it's actually like totally out of my realm, especially at that time. And living in a small community, it wasn't really like the thing people were actually doing 20 years ago.
And you were
um,
young, like 14 or
I
15, I
was
think.
16, I think it
Yeah.
was 16 or 15.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I was pretty young. And yeah, I just had this calling to go there. And it was great because your mom and you opened up this doorway for me that like I didn't know I was approaching, of yoga and this subtle world. And I didn't know I was looking for it, but actually I think, underneath the surface, something was looking and seeking. And I found it there without even having an awareness that I had found it. And so that was a really pivotal, I think that's a very pivotal moment in my life, because it never really left my sight from that moment. Like I
Mhm.
started practicing yoga, and yoga was the only practice or, after school activity that I was doing that I actually did out of my own initiative, and that I actually chose to continue with. And it was even funny because I was in dance, and your parents put you into all kinds of things. And I never practiced any of those things. I practiced right before the rehearsal. And then, but yoga, I was practicing yoga at home by myself without any need to even really practice. There's no rehearsal, there was no recital that was coming, it was just a drawing. Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, that is a beautiful story, a very beautiful story. And I know my mom thinks of you as one of her daughters for sure. So you are highly qualified. When I think of you, I think of wow. You are an incredible teacher with a lot of knowledge that you have accumulated over the years in some areas more than myself. And I'm always humble to learn also from you and what you have learned. And you are also a teacher trainer. Like you have a lot. Can you just tell us a little bit more about your qualifications and experience?
Sure. So my qualifications, I look at my qualifications as a little bit more uncharacteristic than maybe modern yoga, in the fact that because of the relationship that I have with you and with your mother, um, it was more of a mentoring for me. And I was assisting in the classes, and that was part of like kind of training under your wings. And then you invited me to meet Yogi Baba Prem,
Mm.
which maybe about 10 years into that relationship. Yes. And then I kind of moved into more of a mentorship with him, which I guess would be maybe almost 10, a little bit over 10 years now, surprisingly. So I've spent that time one-on-one, I guess, in a way, working and connecting with teachers in that fashion. And in that time, I also took maybe what you might say formal, or I don't know, formal teacher training. I'm not sure which is more formal, but that mentorship actually gave me a very incredible foundation for, the 200 ROIT or 300 registered yoga teacher trainings. So along that journey, I took several of those, and some of them took me to India, which was also a beautiful experience. Um, so yeah, so I guess I've kind of dabbled in a ton of different trainings in different styles of training, like Kundalini, Akanda, Yin. And that's kind of led me to teach in teacher trainings, which is also very fulfilling and fruitful for me to get to share that layer of yoga's wisdom. So that's kind of where I am. I'm not sure exactly how many hours, like in class hours, maybe 2,500-ish or more. I'm not sure. Yeah, but that's kind of that's where I've come from, and mostly on the holistic side of yoga.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I know even cross training into Ayurvedic medicine and
Mm.
into the gods and goddesses, and embracing more of that deeper tradition of knowledge and almost scholaristic, study in Sanskrit, the alphabet, the letters into mantra. And you are known for your devotion to your personal practice. When I hear April, I hear super devoted to a home practice. Mhm.
Yes, I'm very devoted to my home practice. And even when I was practicing in a studio setting, like as well, I would never not do my home practice. So sometimes I was doing a lot of practices in a day when I had more space and time and energy. Yeah, and I think I actually like how Yogi Baba Prem shares, which is our kind of connected teacher as well, that the practice, that yoga practice or that sadhana is the refuge in the storm of life. And so for me, that's exactly what it is. and that the results of me arriving on my mat are so profound and so palatable that it actually just inspires me to return time and time again, right? Like, why would I
Mhm.
not want to do that? The results are so amplified that it's well worth the time. Like, that time is really invaluable. Um, and I guess what I think another aspect that I've learned through kind of being devoted into my practice is that there's an intimacy that's honed through the repeated immersion. So not only is it the practice is, of course, transforming itself, but that repeated immersion into it really starts to transform my life. So it's like, as I come to the practice, all of a sudden, without much effort, it's infused into my life, and I'm able to embrace more of this yogic lifestyle, which is so valuable to me and so valuable to many.
And easy to adapt to environmental circumstances, easy to deal with or react or respond or not react or respond, in particular, maybe to immunity issues. So
Mhm.
have you ever felt in your life? I know I have weakness or weaker times in our life, and has yoga helped you through that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. For me, immunity is something that it's always been a little bit of a struggle. Like, I've always had a little bit more of a lower immunity just by the nature of maybe my constitution. Um, but with yoga, it's not something that's really got me down too much, because I've been using those yogic techniques to promote and to support my immunity and my vitality and my health. So although we can look at like lifestyle and diet, I found that for me, the practice is what has supported the strength of my immunity, even when I know that it was a little bit of a struggle maybe for my body to stay there, yet I've been able to, in most of my life, stay fairly balanced with my immunity, more so as a result of my practice. However, when I was a new mom and going through like postpartum depletion, that was like such a huge drop for me in terms of my health and my vitality and my immune system and even my mental well-being. And it felt, this is a little extreme, but it kind of felt in a way like my subtle body, after going through all that, pregnancy and then labor, and then, all of a sudden you have this human that you have to keep alive. And before, I was just keeping myself alive. It felt a bit like, in sleep deprivation, it felt like my subtle body was like destroyed and just so weak that I couldn't get into a groove. It was so hard to navigate life. Everything became so hard, and feeling good, feeling healthy was hard. And even I was incorporating, trying to incorporate, specific diet and work with supplements, but you're also still sleep deprived because you have a new child. And so it's like this battle. And after, I got into more of a sleep hygiene, I still was suffering from this lower immunity and this lower energy and lower vitality. And it wasn't till I really like tuned back into my sadhana again, when I started to get, navigate having a child and my routine, and here's my practice, and finding that play that was working for me, and then actually just mentally being like, okay, I need to devote myself back to my sadhana, and I need to do specific things, because all this outer stuff isn't helping me actually anymore, and I need to get inside, and I had to do the work. And it was like a bit of like there was some suffering there for sure, but going in and doing those specific techniques to strengthen up my inner body, my subtle body, my energy body, right, which is strengthening my immune system, eventually brought me back up. And it took some time. I dedicated myself first to like a 40-day, I'm doing these things for 40 days in my practice. And I did those and it was like, okay. And that gave me more willpower to actually incorporate more, a little more time, a little more practices. And so I'd say about 90 days, I was kind of like, you know, finally feeling a bit like I was functioning like a normal human again. And, you know, I wasn't getting as sick as often, of course, because those are the benefits of practicing yoga. And there's so much immune strengthening benefits and boosting to that, and everything else that comes along with that. So yeah, it was a very intense time of depletion for me, and using the practices of yoga, these timeless, tested, proven techniques, really, you can pick yourself back up and work from the inside out, which I've found is so much more powerful actually than sometimes working from the outside in, even though we want to combine and integrate those two worlds.
I believe it births longevity.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your story. You have created two very special. I am so grateful that you said yes to coming together in this collaboration and creating a program called Embracing Immunity. Because part of where I come from, or part of my foundation, is sharing and creating a community and a collaboration and coming together and learning from each other and supporting each other and promoting each other as well. And so I'm really thankful that you said yes to joining this program and that you have created two beautiful classes for Embracing Immunity. Can you tell us a little bit more about those two programs that you so generously created?
Sure, yes. And I'm so honored and humbled that Lacey invited me to participate in this Embracing Immunity program for all of you. So yes, the two programs that I created, or classes that go within the program, the first one is Soma Serenade. And this is really a practice that aims to nourish that subtle body that I was just kind of talking about relative to my own experience, to nourish our ojas, our vitality, and to nourish the nervous system, right? To nourish the nervous system, which is so important when we're looking at the strength of our immune system. As we nourish the nervous system, we can spend more time in the parasympathetic state, rest, digest, relax, where our immune system is functioning optimally. That's where it functions best. So this practice itself also embodies a connection with the heart chakra, which aligns very well with the immune system. And of course, when we apply that appropriately in a balanced fashion, that tuning into a level of compassion, unconditional love, opening up to that inner space of love, of innate love, even beyond, the word of love, that promotes ojas, and that promotes our vitality and our immunity. So I've threaded in within that practice very specific ancient yogic techniques to enhance those benefits, to do, as I mentioned before, work inside out, from the inside out. And the second class is Subtle Immune Boost. And so this practice focuses very specifically, even more than the other one, on the subtle body. And it's choreographed, the sequence is choreographed around three very specific techniques that are intended to build the subtle body strength and also to strengthen our aura, or our electromagnetic field. And a byproduct of that strengthening is the strengthening of vitality and of immune system, and the boosting of energy. So overall, it amplifies, these techniques amplify our health, they amplify our vitality. And these techniques that I've weaved within here are some of the very techniques that I actually use to like pull myself out of that depletion, of that lesser than optimal health, much lesser than optimal health. And I know that it will just be just as powerful for you, because these are timeless techniques. I don't think I've ever met anyone that's used these techniques that said, no, it didn't work. They're so really meant for anybody, anywhere, anytime. So yes, those are two of the programs that I created to weave in with Lacey's Embracing Immunity program.
Doesn't that sound great, everyone? And so, thank you for your time, April. I'd like to leave this meeting, our collaboration and communication together, with a final question for you. And my question to you is, what is your Dharma? Can you tell our viewers and our friends watching, what is your Dharma?
Okay, so my Dharma is, I'm noticing that my Dharma is twofold. It's to preserve and to share the ancient wisdom of yoga that is so powerful to humanity, and to support the elevation of group consciousness. Of course, using these magical yogic tools so that we as a collective can actively and more effortlessly access the realization of ourselves as already whole and already complete. So that's really my innate intention for teaching, practicing, and living.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I feel just in your answer more peaceful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you, everyone, for watching this and connecting with us. And we hope to see you in the program. Have a wonderful and beautiful day, everyone. Thanks, April.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.